Imagine you could travel back in time. Not to ancient Rome. Not to the Egypt of the pharaohs. Much further back than that. We're talking 40, 50, 60,000 years ago. You arrive on a planet that looks exactly like ours. Same forests, same oceans, same starlit skies. But something is different. Something that would make you question everything you think you know about what it means to be human. On this planet, you are not alone. I don't mean other animals, wolves, mammoths, cave bears. I mean other human beings. Or near humans. Bipedal creatures with faces that resemble ours, eyes that carry some flicker of intelligence. They make tools. They bury their dead. They live in groups, hunt together, and perhaps communicate in ways we're only beginning to understand. That planet existed. That planet was Earth. For tens of thousands of years, at least 2, 3, perhaps more species of the genus Homo coexisted on this world. The Neanderthals dominated Europe and parts of Asia, resilient as stone, with bodies adapted to cold and brains just as large as ours. The Denisovans spread across East Asia, so mysterious that we only discovered their existence through fragments of bone and ancient DNA. Homo erectus still held on in some islands of Southeast Asia. And there were others, Homo floresiensis, tiny creatures living on the island of Flores in Indonesia, Homo luzonensis, discovered in the Philippines just a few years ago. The Earth was not ours. It was a shared world. And then, in the blink of an eye in geological terms, all of those species vanished. One by one. The fossil record shows a deeply unsettling pattern. In almost every place where Homo sapiens arrived, the other species soon disappeared. Sometimes within a few thousand years. Sometimes within just a few centuries. Only we remained. The question scientists have been asking for decades, and the question that will guide this entire video is, why? What did we have that the others didn't? It wasn't luck. Luck doesn't explain a consistent global pattern. It wasn't raw physical strength. Neanderthals were more robust than us. It wasn't simply surviving harsh climates. Our cousins endured ice ages and droughts too. There was something more. A set of characteristics, behaviors, and capabilities that, taken together, made us the most successful species this planet has ever produced. 7 of those factors stand out in the scientific literature as potentially decisive. And over the next several minutes, we're going to explore each one of them with the depth this story truly deserves. Reason 1. The cognitive revolution and complex language. Everything begins with words. That sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But think about it carefully. What is a word, really? It's an arbitrary sound that, by collective agreement, represents an idea. The word stone has nothing of stone in it. It's just a cluster of sounds that we, by silent consensus, decided to associate with an object in the real world. Neanderthals likely had some form of vocal communication. The anatomy was there. The hyoid bone, essential to speech, has been found in Neanderthal remains and looks remarkably similar to ours. They probably exchanged information about where food could be found, where danger lurked. That alone is extraordinary for any animal. But modern humans did something different. Something that historian Yuval Noah Harari called the cognitive revolution, which is thought to have occurred between 70 and 30,000 years ago. During this period, something shifted in the human brain, or at least in how we used it, and we became capable of talking about things that don't exist. Things that don't exist. No chimpanzee will ever convince another to trade a real banana for a future promise. No Neanderthal likely rallied hundreds of strangers under the belief in a shared spiritual ancestor they had never seen, would never see, and who may never have existed at all. But we do this constantly. Our language allows us to create shared fictions. And those fictions, nations, religions, laws, corporations, money, are the foundation of every large-scale act of cooperation humanity has ever achieved. Think about what that means in practical terms. Deep in the Paleolithic, a group of Homo sapiens could communicate not just about what was happening, but about what might happen. They could plan a hunt 3 days from now, in a valley on the other side of the mountain, coordinating dozens of people who had perhaps never worked together before. They could say, at the next full moon, all hunters from the 3 groups will meet in the river valley. Those who bring the most meat will have first rights to the harvest. A sentence like that presupposes future time, negotiation, reciprocity, and trust between strangers, all mediated by language. Neanderthals, by contrast, appear to have operated in smaller, more closed groups with less social flexibility. Their cooperation was real, but seems to have been largely confined to family units or tight-knit circles. When the environment shifted, when prey migrated, when disease struck, they had fewer social resources to reorganize and adapt. Complex language also allowed us to accumulate knowledge in a way unprecedented in the history of life on Earth. A grandfather could describe in vivid detail where he had found high-quality flint deposits decades earlier. A mother could teach her daughter to recognize the poisonous plants that looked edible, without the daughter needing to learn that lesson the hard way, possibly at the cost of her own life. This intergenerational accumulation of knowledge, transmitted through words and stories, created something no other species had ever possessed. A collective memory that grew larger with every passing generation. Reason 2: tools and advanced technology. Neanderthals made tools. That is not in dispute. The Mousterian lithic tradition, closely associated with them, produced blades and scrapers of impressive craftsmanship for the period. But there was a fundamental detail that separated their technology from that of modern humans. Most Neanderthal tools were designed for close-range use. Knives, scrapers, spear tips intended for direct combat with prey. That meant the hunter had to get dangerously close to the animal. A bison, a mammoth, a woolly rhinoceros. Every hunt was also a genuine risk of death or serious injury. Homo sapiens developed something different: distance hunting. The earliest throwing spears appear in the record in primitive forms hundreds of thousands of years ago, but it was with Homo sapiens that this technology was truly refined. Then came the spear thrower, a device that acted as an extension of the human arm, multiplying the force and range of the throw. And by around 20,000 years ago, there is evidence of the bow and arrow appearing independently in different parts of the world. This wasn't just a better tool. It was a paradigm shift. The hunter could kill from a distance, with far less personal risk. Larger prey could be taken down more safely. Animals that were previously too dangerous to approach became accessible. But the technological innovations of Homo sapiens went far beyond hunting. One of the most surprising and least celebrated is the sewing needle. The earliest bone needles with a hole for thread appear in the archaeological record around 50,000 years ago. That might seem trivial. It isn't. Before the needle, clothing was made by tying pieces of hide together with strips of leather. The result was functional but crude, drafty, heavy, limited in shape. With the needle, Homo sapiens began sewing fitted garments, layered for warmth, with hoods, gloves, and boots that sealed in body heat. This may sound like a detail of prehistoric fashion, but it was actually what enabled our expansion into the coldest regions of the planet: Siberia, the Arctic, Northern Europe during the last glaciation. Neanderthals had lived in the cold far longer than we had, and their bodies were physically adapted to it: shorter limbs to retain heat, greater muscle mass. But when modern humans arrived with high-quality sewn clothing, that anatomical advantage became far less decisive. Technology, over the long run, outpaces biology. Reason 3: climatic adaptability and flexible diet. If you could examine the dietary patterns of the different human species of the Pleistocene, you'd notice something striking. Neanderthals were, to a large extent, specialized carnivores. Isotope analysis of their bones, a technique that reveals what an animal ate over its lifetime, shows that meat was the absolute foundation of the Neanderthal diet. In some periods and regions, it accounted for up to 90% of their caloric intake. This isn't surprising. They evolved in cold European and Asian environments where edible vegetation was scarce for much of the year and megafauna was abundant. The problem with being a specialist is that you depend entirely on what you've specialized in. Homo sapiens, by contrast, ate everything. Roots, fruits, seeds, insects, fish, shellfish, eggs, mammals of all sizes, birds, reptiles. Some prehistoric cultures got half their calories from plants and half from animals. Others had diets built almost entirely around seafood. Some groups hunted reindeer exclusively for certain seasons, then switched strategy completely. This dietary flexibility was an insurance policy against scarcity. When one food source disappeared, through climate change, the extinction of a favored prey species, or competition from other groups, Homo sapiens could adapt and find alternatives. The last major glaciation, which peaked around 20,000 years ago, was a brutal test for every species on the planet. The great mammals of the European steppe, mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, giant bison, began to decline. For Neanderthals, this was catastrophic. Their populations were already fragmented and falling when modern humans arrived in Europe. But there's another dimension to this adaptability that goes beyond diet: the capacity to inhabit virtually any environment. In 40,000 years, Homo sapiens colonized every habitable continent on Earth. We reached Australia by crossing open ocean when nothing we'd call a boat yet existed, only rafts or primitive canoes. We reached the Americas by crossing the frozen land bridge of Beringia. We reached the most remote islands of the Pacific by navigating by stars. We established ourselves in deserts, in Arctic tundra, in dense tropical rainforests. No other human species came anywhere close to this level of geographic dispersal. And every new environment that Homo sapiens occupied was one less environment for the others. Reason 4. Social networks and primitive trade. There is an object found in Homo sapiens archaeological sites that scientists consider one of the most compelling proofs of our cognitive and social superiority: marine shells discovered hundreds of miles from the sea. Not freshwater shells, common inland. These are coastal species, animals that only live in the ocean. And they turn up in prehistoric campsites deep in the interior of continents, used as ornaments, as tokens of exchange, as symbols of status. This means a trade network was operating. A shell left the coast, passed from hand to hand, from group to group, and eventually reached someone who had never laid eyes on the ocean. Neanderthals also made ornaments. There was a period, possibly influenced by contact with modern humans, when they painted shells and used them as adornments. But the reach of those networks appears to have been far more limited. Evidence of Neanderthal objects traveling long distances is rare and disputed. For Homo sapiens, these exchange networks were far more than a trade in trinkets. They were systems for sharing information, building alliances, and distributing risk. Imagine two neighboring groups that establish a regular trading relationship. Group A lives near a river rich in fish. Group B lives close to a region with high-quality flint for tool-making. They exchange fish for flint, flint for fish. Both benefit. But more important than the objects traded is what else travels along those same routes: information. This season, the reindeer are migrating north. There's a freshwater spring 3 days walk to the east. The group to the south is hostile. Avoid their territory. The route that grows along the lake's edge works as a painkiller. Every trade encounter was also an exchange of collective intelligence. And that distributed collective intelligence made every group plugged into the network more resilient and adaptable than it would have been in isolation. In times of crisis, a prolonged drought, the collapse of a hunting ground, isolated groups perished. Groups connected to broader networks could migrate, be absorbed by allies, or receive resources from distant trading partners. Evidence suggests that this kind of intergroup network among Homo sapiens existed at least 90,000 years ago in Africa. When those populations migrated to other continents, they carried with them not just their tools and their genes, they carried this way of being, this habit of connecting beyond the boundaries of the immediate group. Reason 5. Domestication and cooperation with nature. There is a moment that divides human history in two, the moment we controlled fire. Fire itself was nothing new for hominids. Homo erectus was using controlled fire at least 1 million years ago, possibly more. Neanderthals used it too. But the way Homo sapiens related to fire was different in scale and consequence. Fire cooked food, and cooking transformed our biology. Cooked food releases far more calories and nutrients than the same food eaten raw. That meant our bodies could extract more energy with less effort, and that freed up energy went, quite literally, to the brain. There are compelling hypotheses that cooking was one of the factors that enabled the growth of the human brain over the course of evolution. But fire did far more than cook food. It changed the human day. Before controlled fire, the night belonged to danger. Nocturnal predators, cold, darkness. With fire, the hours after sunset became social space. The archaeological evidence shows that it is around hearths that the earliest signs of cave art, music, and collective ritual appear. The campfire was humanity's first meeting hall. And then came the wolf. The domestication of the dog, which descends from the gray wolf, is one of the most extraordinary episodes in our entire history. Scientists still debate exactly when it happened, but the earliest evidence of domestic dogs ranges from 15 to 40,000 years ago, depending on the criteria used. What is certain is that this partnership was transformative. Dogs had senses that humans lacked, a sense of smell and hearing vastly superior to ours. They could track prey, alert to predators, guard camps through the night, and assist in hunts by driving animals into traps. In return, they received protection, warmth from the fire, and the remains of the hunt. A mutually beneficial partnership that, in evolutionary terms, was extraordinarily successful for both species. Neanderthals, as far as we can tell, did not domesticate wolves. They may not have had the social structure or the communicative capacity necessary to establish and sustain that kind of long-term cross-species alliance. With dogs at their side, Homo sapiens became an even more effective hunter. And hunting efficiency, in a world of limited resources, is the difference between thriving and disappearing. Reason 6. Imagination and collective belief. This is perhaps the hardest of the 7 to explain, and at the same time, the most fascinating. Around 40,000 years ago, something exploded in the human archaeological record. Suddenly, across sites throughout Europe and Asia, objects began appearing that have no obvious practical function. Sculptures of female figures with exaggerated forms. Flutes carved from bone. Paintings on cave walls depicting animals with breathtaking realism. Hybrid figures, half human, half animal, that clearly represent something supernatural. What was this? What changed? Archaeologists call it the creative explosion or the Upper Paleolithic Revolution. The most widely accepted theory is that some shift occurred in the functioning of the human brain, perhaps a neural reorganization, perhaps an innovation in the structure of language that allowed us to combine concepts in entirely new ways. And with that capacity for combination came full imagination, the ability to conceive of what does not exist. And from there, the ability to create collective belief systems. Why does that matter for survival? Because collective belief systems are the glue that holds large groups of strangers together. A group of 30 people can stay cohesive through bonds of kinship and personal friendship. Everyone knows everyone, there are direct obligations, there are shared histories. But a group of 3,000? Of 300,000? How do you keep that many people cooperating, following the same rules, sacrificing individual interest for the collective good? You create a story, a founding myth, a common ancestor, real or imagined, a God who sees everything and punishes betrayal, a sacred law that all must respect, a collective ritual that periodically reaffirms belonging to the group. These symbolic systems, religions, mythologies, codes of honor, tribal totems, allowed Homo sapiens to scale cooperation in ways no other species could match. Neanderthals buried their dead, possibly with offerings. That suggests some form of belief in an afterlife or in funerary ritual. But there is no evidence that they developed the kind of complex symbolic system, shared across distinct groups, that Homo sapiens created. And without that, large-scale cooperation simply does not happen. In the words of evolutionary biologist David Sloan Wilson, groups with coherent shared myths outcompete groups that don't have them, not because the myths are true, but because they make people act in coordinated ways. And coordinated groups, over the long run, dominate disorganized ones. Reason 7. Anatomy and physical endurance. This last factor is often underestimated, because we tend to think of our evolutionary advantage in purely cognitive terms. But the human body is also an extraordinary machine, specifically optimized for one thing that very few animals can do: move across long distances for long periods of time in the heat. We are the only primate, and one of the very few mammals, capable of sweating profusely across our entire body surface. We are covered in sweat glands that function as a highly efficient cooling system. This allows us to keep moving under direct sunlight, in temperatures that would force most other animals into the shade. Combined with our upright posture and the mechanics of our feet and hips, this makes us uniquely capable of something that has no real parallel in the animal kingdom: endurance hunting. Persistence hunting, also called endurance hunting, is a technique that some indigenous people still practice today, and that was likely used for hundreds of thousands of years. The principle is simple: you don't need to be faster than the animal. You just need to never stop. An antelope can sprint at 70 kilometers per hour. A human runs perhaps 18 on average, and far less over prolonged distances. But the antelope overheats. After an explosive sprint, it must stop, pant, let its body temperature drop. The human hunter, with a sweat-based cooling system working at full capacity, keeps moving, hour after hour, under the midday sun, following tracks, reading the animal's behavior, predicting where it's heading, using language and planning to coordinate with other hunters spread across kilometers. Eventually, the animal collapses from exhaustion. The hunter arrives. This technique has been documented among the San people of southern Africa, among indigenous peoples of the Americas, among Aboriginal Australians. It is, quite possibly, one of the oldest and most effective hunting strategies ever employed by our species. Neanderthals, with their more robust bodies and shorter limbs, were likely better suited to short, intense bursts of effort. They were ambush hunters, close-range confronters, a strategy that works well but demands greater risk and more energy per successful hunt. The long-distance runner versus the sprinter. In a sprint, the Neanderthal might have won. In the marathon of evolution, we were the ones who crossed the finish line. Conclusion: the last of a world that belonged to many. When we bring these 7 factors together, the language that creates collective fictions, the tools that outpace biology, the diet that knows no boundaries, the networks that distribute risk and knowledge, the alliances with other species, the myths that unite strangers, and the body that never stops. We see a portrait of a species that didn't just survive, but came to dominate every corner of this planet. But this story inevitably provokes a deeper reflection. We are the sole survivors of a lineage that was once diverse. The last humans in a world that once had many. And that evolutionary solitude places on us a responsibility that no other species has ever carried. We are the only guardians of everything that human consciousness has ever built, dreamed, discovered, and created across hundreds of thousands of years. There is no Neanderthal to compare our civilizations to. No Denisovan to tell us whether we're making the right choices. No other human species to offer a different perspective on what it means to be sapiens, to be wise on this planet. We are the single experiment, the solitary bet. And when we look at the 7 reasons that brought us to this point, perhaps the most important question is no longer, why did we survive? But rather, what do we do with that? How do we honor the 10,000 years of civilization, the 50,000 years of art and language, the 200,000 years of physical evolution that made us what we are? The very traits that made us prevail. The capacity to cooperate at scale, to create myths that unite, to use technology to overcome biological limits, to adapt to any environment, are the same traits that, poorly directed, could undo us. The story of our survival is extraordinary. What we do with that legacy is still being written, and you are part of that. If this video made you think, made you question, made you look at our species with fresh eyes, then it did what it was made to do. Let us know in the comments which of these 7 reasons you think was the most decisive for our survival. Some people bet everything on language. Others believe it was collective belief. Some argue it was the tools, plain and simple. There's no wrong answer. There's only perspective. And that's exactly what makes us human. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There's a lot more content like this on the way. Hit the like button if you made it this far. And we'll see you in the next one.